For number 1, this goes back to our very first unit when we were solving literal equations. We're trying to solve this for h. We need to get rid of pi r squared. Everything is being multiplied, so we can divide both sides by pi r squared. And that would be your answer. Other questions on this? Alright, so couple things. 1, look at your course calendar. Notice when your Khan Academy quiz dates are. First one is due this Friday. There's only one. And then the next one will be due next Friday. There will be multiple due next Friday. One of the graphing linear inequalities will also be due, not the 9th, but the 16th, because I didn't want like 4 due next week. So there should be 3 due next week. And then there'll be 2 due the following week, which is that last day of school before break. So I do send out reminders each Friday, so make sure you look at that, get that done, because you won't see another reminder until like January. Also see that we're going to test before break. So if you leave the week before or that last week early, you're going to be missing your tests. I'm going to put them in probably that weekend, but not send out progress reports until later, like in January. So keep that in mind. But that last day that I see you guys would be a flex day. Questions on any of that? Christina? 16th is our last day of school. And then we come back on the 2nd or 3rd or something of January. So 3 weeks from now. Right. Also, when we go to take the quiz, if you have any section objective on the quiz that you did not attempt, I will not be replacing it with your tests. So moving forward, if you do not attempt on the quiz, I do not replace with your tests. So that will stay a 0 if you do not attempt. So keep that in mind also. Today, we're starting our new unit on inequalities. Most of this stuff is going to be review from Algebra 1, if you were paying attention then. There is one new thing in this that kind of ties into Algebra 2, those of you moving on to that. So we're going to start today with multi-step inequalities. So everyone should have these notes in front of them. If you weren't paying attention last unit, or maybe your phone was a distraction, maybe keep that in mind for this unit. Put it away if it's a distraction. All right. So some of the rules for graphing inequalities. We're going to use an open circle. For greater than or less than signs, I said that backwards, less than or greater than signs. And then use a closed circle for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to signs. So if we were to get this answer, x is less than 3, we have to know which one to use and then also graph it. So this would be an open circle because it doesn't have the line at 3 going to the left. In general, the direction your inequality is pointing is where you are going to draw your line. Sometimes that's not the case, depending on how it looks. Like if I switch this, these are saying the exact same thing, but I wouldn't draw the arrow to the right. I'd also have to read it backwards. 3 is greater than x. Or x is less than 3. Same thing. Questions about that one? Number 3, I'm going to skip around. This would be a closed circle because it has the line at 7 going to the right. If you're not sure which direction, ask yourself, what is it saying? So if it says x is greater than or equal to 7, would 8 be a possibility? Would 9 be a possibility? The answer is that. If the answer to that is yes, go that way. Would 6 be a possibility? No, so I can't go that way. Then these next two are opposite. Now we have a drawn inequality. We have to write the equation or inequality for it. So for 5, what do we think the inequality would be? Ada?
X is less than
It has to be less than or greater than because it's open circle. It has to be less than because it's going to the left. For 6, then what would that be? Matt?
X is greater than or equal to 4.
Has to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to because it's closed. Has to be greater than because it's going to the right. Alright. So then more rules. You must switch the inequality symbol when you multiply or divide. By a negative number. So this is when you are doing something to both sides. Like at the end, if you get negative 2x is greater than 4, you would switch the sign. So let me show you that example. Off to the side, just write this so you have it for future reference. If I were to solve this and divide, Alright, so if I were to divide this, both sides by negative 2, the sign would switch every single time. But if what I was dividing was already negative, then the sign would switch. So what I mean by that is this. If instead I had 2x is greater than negative 4, and I divide both sides by 2, the sign would not change. So if you are actually dividing by a negative number or multiplying by a negative number on both sides, the sign changes. If not, the sign stays the same. That will be the root of all your problems if you switch the sign and it's not supposed to be, or vice versa. Alright, so let's do some actual examples. Because before we were just practicing. So we're going to start with number 9. Solve this just like a regular equation, except remember your inequality rules. So you're trying to get x by itself. You would move the 2 to the other side. Keep your inequality symbol. Don't change it to an equals. divide both sides by 3. Would my sign change? No, not in this case. Then in your number line, it's blank. I would say put -2 in the middle and kind of branch out from there. So this would be -1, 0, 1, -3, -4, -5. Would this be open or closed? Or?
Could you put 0 in the middle?
You could, yeah. The order does not matter as long as you have -2 on there somewhere. Okay. Would this be open or closed? Open. Going to the left. So you have to be able to solve these correctly and then graph them correctly. Questions on that one? Who remembers doing this before? Someone. Okay. Anyone still writing this down? Go on to the next page. Right, this is like an extra step. Those of you going on to Algebra 2, you'll be using interval notation all the time. So this is like a good intro to that. So with interval notation, we write using parentheses or brackets. Think about parentheses, go with open. So if you see strictly greater than, strictly less than, you're going to be using parentheses. If you see greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, that's going to use brackets. The only time this is different is if this goes to negative or positive infinity, then we're going to use parentheses no matter what. I don't know if I spelled that right. Yeah, sure. And it'll take a little bit of time to get used to the interval notation, so we're going to practice with both. So let's start with number 2. Let's skip some. So to solve this, I would do what first? So we'd have x minus 3x minus 6 is greater than 4. And then what could we do next? Okay, we could do that. Or combine them. That step, the order in which you do it doesn't matter. So let's say we combine them then add, or add then combine, it doesn't matter. Bless you. I'm going to rewrite that over here. Negative 2x is greater than 10. So then when we divide, will our sign change or stay the same? Change. So that's your inequality answer. The x is less than -5. You have to graph it. So however you want to do your number line, do that. Make sure you fill up your number line. That would be an open circle going to the left. Then your interval notation, you're going to read it left to right. So left, this is going to keep going left all the way towards negative infinity, so that's where I would start. Infinity, negative infinity always has a parenthesis. Where does it stop? Reading left to right. Where does it stop? -5. This is an open circle, so we're also going to put a parenthesis. So it'll look like that. It's supposed to be an infinity sign, but mine wasn't very well. Sure, that was better. So all of our inequality answers are going to look something like that, either with an infinity and a number, maybe both infinities, brackets, parentheses, could be a mixture. Do you have any questions about that one? Let's do one more of these and then we'll move to more. Let's do 4. So just like before, distribute. We have negative 8x plus 8 minus x is less than or equal to negative 28. Combine your like terms. Do exactly what it says. Negative 8 minus x would be negative 9x. And then continue solving. Get rid of your 8 by subtracting. Divide both sides by negative 9. Is my sign going to stay the same or change? Change. And this is also going to become a positive instead of a negative because we divided by a negative that was already a negative. So that's our inequality answer. Fill out your number line. This would be a closed circle going to the right. So if I'm reading this left to right, where does this start? 4 is closed, so I need a bracket. And then where does this end? And that would be a parenthesis. Questions about that one? Taylor.
Why is it a parenthesis after infinity?
Infinities are always parentheses, no matter what. So even though we started off it being closed with a bracket, infinity is always parentheses, no matter what. Okay. Other questions on that one? We're just going to do a couple more and then you'll have time to practice. So on the next page, let's do number 5. So now this is kind of going back to when we were solving and we had variables on both sides. The rules are still the same. We still have to get all the variables to one side, the constants to the other. How you do that doesn't matter. So let's say I want to move the 2x and move the 1. We have 8x is less than 8. If you want to do that in 2 separate steps, you're more than welcome to do that. Divide both sides by 8. So x is less than 1. Do that on your number line. So it would be an open circle going to the left. Interval notation, where does that start? So I kept going all the way to the left. Negative infinity, so that's a parenthesis. And where does it stop? 1, and it's open, so that's also a parenthesis. Questions on that one? at the remaining problems on this page, the last page, the page before that. Find any questions you want to see go over. Maybe it looks challenging, you're not sure where to start, anything like that. Jackie, number 8. This one?
On the very back. I don't think I have that up here. Hold on.
I don't know if that's the right one either. Might be. And then do 6. So this one has decimals. Remember that you have your calculator, you can use your calculator, but the process is the same. On this side, we would combine our like terms. That would be 3.1a. Get rid of the 5.1 by adding it to the other side. And then we would divide both sides by 3.1. Someone do that, tell me what you get. You can take your stuff. I don't know. You'll be back. 3.7. Was it a repeating decimal? Most of the time when we write our inequality answers, it's variable sign, then the number. So if this bothers you, you can switch it. So whatever direction it's pointing to or away from the variable, just make it the opposite. So right now it's pointing away from, so it also has to point away from. You don't have to switch it, but if you want to, you can. And that goes for all of them. These don't ask you to do the number line, but I would have you do the number line or solve. So solve and do the number line. So just for practice, I could do a makeshift one. So I can make this really simple. 3 is less than that. 4 is more than that. This would be a closed circle going to the right. If I were to do this in interval notation, this would start at 3.7. It's closed, so that would be a bracket. And it would go towards infinity. So even though this page doesn't say to do that, it would be good practice to keep doing that. Look at where it starts, because you're reading it left to right. So it starts here. It's closed, so that's already a bracket. Then you're looking at where does it end, and because it keeps going, it's going to really never end. So we just put it goes towards infinity. Negative infinity? No. It would have to be first, because it's always used to grade us. Right. Other questions on that one? going back to number 10 at the beginning. If we were to solve this, what would we do first? There are multiple ways to solve this. It depends on if you want to get rid of the fraction or deal with it. So we have x over 6 is greater than -3. What would we do next? On both sides. If this was a negative, like out here or with one of those, then the sign would change. But because nothing is negative here, when I multiply by 6, the sign is not going to change. So make your number line. And you can make it whatever you want. You want to count by 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, it doesn't matter. As long as it makes sense. So this would be an open circle going to the right. And then our interval notation, where does this start? It's open, so that's a parenthesis. Where does this end? Infinity, that's also a parenthesis. Questions on that one? And then let's go back to 6. Right. 6 is going to be very similar to 5, but it's less than or equal to. So pick and choose what you want to move. If you want to move 2x over, then you have to move 20 over, or vice versa. So if we get rid of 2x, I would need to subtract 20. If you wanted to get rid of the 1 instead, you'd be getting rid of 5. It always just the opposite. So we have -21 is less than or equal to 3x. Divide both sides by 3. Will our sign change? No. So you can leave it like this, but when you graph it, you'd have to read it backwards. X is greater than or equal to -7. Or you can rewrite it, because these are the same thing. Rewriting it may help you not draw it in the wrong direction. Just remember to read it backwards and you should be fine. Interval notation, where does this start? Would this be a parenthesis or a bracket?
Bracket.
And then where does it end?
Positive.
And that is always a parenthesis. Okay. Any others we want to see, go over, have questions about? So for the remainder of class, you guys can work on this practice, any of the problems left. You can do the one Khan Academy that's due Friday, knock it out the way so you don't have to worry about it later. Either of those things, but be working on something. Let me know if you have questions or need me to check anything.